On a lonely mountain slope stood a cabin, so ruined it looked ready to collapse. Its roof sagged, its walls were split, and the wind howled through its broken windows. Sitting outside were an elderly couple abandoned by their own children and left with nothing but a loyal dog and each other. Most would have walked away defeated, but not them. With bare hands and unshakable determination, they began rebuilding the wreck piece by piece. What they created out of sorrow didn't just transform the cabin. It turned into a paradise that stunned everyone who saw it. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. High in the mountains where the wind howled through the trees and snow often blanketed the earth, stood a broken wooden cabin. Its roof sagged, its walls splintered, and its windows were patched with scraps of cloth. Outside, an elderly couple sat side by side on a weathered bench. Their faces were lined with years of hardship, their eyes heavy with stories untold. Once they had children who promised to care for them, but as time passed, the children drifted away, leaving their parents forgotten in this ruined place. Yet they weren't truly alone. At their feet sat a loyal German shepherd, watching over them with unwavering devotion. Though their bellies often ached from hunger and their bones stiffened with the cold, the couple held each other's hands tightly. The cabin was crumbling. The world had turned its back, but they refused to give in. With every sunrise, they whispered the same vow: we will endure. Abandoned and stripped of comfort, all they had left was love, resilience, and the faint hope that even broken things could be rebuilt. It was the beginning of a story that would defy despair and transform tragedy into inspiration. Life in the mountains was never easy, but for the old couple it was relentless. The cabin's roof leaked during every storm, and in winter, icy. Wind slipped through the cracks in the walls, chilling them to the bone. Nights were long and merciless, and they often slept huddled together beneath patched blankets. Their food was scarce, sometimes only bread and boiled potatoes, yet they shared every crumb with their loyal dog, who refused to leave their side. Every morning brought new challenges. Water had to be fetched from a distant stream, firewood chopped from fallen branches, and repairs attempted with nothing more than rusty nails and worn-out tools. Sometimes the husband's trembling hands struggled to hold the hammer, and the wife's tired eyes made sewing patches almost impossible. Still, neither complained. They'd endured much in life, and though abandoned by those they raised, they carried the burden quietly, leaning on each other's strength. The neighbors rarely visited. The mountain path was too long, and few cared enough to make the journey. Alone, forgotten, and surrounded by silence, the couple could have surrendered to despair, but they didn't. Instead, they sat by the flickering fire at night, whispering hope into the darkness, believing that as long as they had each other, there was still something worth living. 4.1. Morning as dawn broke over the mountains, the husband picked up a broken plank and stared at the cabin's sagging walls. We can't live like this forever, he murmured. His wife nodded silently. They had no money, no help, but they had time, determination, and their hands. Slowly they began. The husband scavenged wood from fallen trees and abandoned sheds nearby. He carried each piece back on his weary shoulders, while his wife sorted them, sanding rough edges and saving every nail. Together, they turned scraps into something useful. The German shepherd kept watch, barking whenever strangers approached. Their work was slow, almost painfully so, But each day showed progress. A new beam replaced the broken. Roof support. Gaps in the walls were filled with mud and straw. The floor, once rotted and unsafe, grew solid beneath their feet again. Every improvement brought warmth back into their hearts. In the evenings they sat on the steps of the cabin, admiring their progress. It may not be grand, the wife whispered, but it's ours. Her husband smiled, his hands blistered, his back aching, yet his spirit stronger than ever. They weren't just repairing wood. They were rebuilding their dignity. By winter's first snowfall, the cabin no longer looked abandoned. Smoke rose gently from its chimney, and the couple sat proudly beside their loyal dog. What was once a ruin now began to resemble a home again, a place where love and hard work pushed back against despair. As spring arrived, the mountains seemed to notice the couple's resilience. The snow melted into clear streams that fed the soil, and the old woman decided to plant seeds she had saved in a small tin box for years. She dug with her frail hands while her husband carefully watered the earth. Soon, tiny green shoots appeared, promising life and nourishment. The sight filled them with hope. The cabin was no longer surrounded by emptiness, but by growth. They expanded their efforts. A small vegetable garden took shape, providing carrots, beans, and potatoes. Wild flowers were planted near the cabin's entrance, their colors bright against the rugged landscape. Chickens from a kind neighbor soon joined their homestead, plucking happily as they scratched the ground. Even the German shepherd seemed livelier, trotting proudly around the yard as if guarding paradise. The once broken cabin now breathed with the rhythm of life. Word of their determination slowly spread. Hikers passing through Harmony Creek often stopped to marvel at the little garden, the repaired cabin, and the elderly couple working side by side. Some offered small gifts, seeds, tools, or a bag of flour. Strangers were inspired, neighbors touched by their perseverance. What began as survival had blossomed into beauty. Nature had blessed them, and their spirit had turned the forgotten ruin into a sanctuary of peace. The transformation of the cabin didn't just touch passers-by. It became a story whispered through nearby villages. People spoke of the elderly couple who abandoned and forgotten had turned despair into determination. Soon, curious visitors came not out of pity, but admiration. They marveled at the garden, the blooming flowers, and the smoke curling warmly from the repaired chimney. Many left with more than memories. They left inspired. Point one. Young man moved by their strength returned days later with tools. A woman brought baskets of fruit, while others offered blankets and seeds. The couple had never asked for help, but kindness began to surround them. The once empty mountain path now echoed with footsteps of those wanting to witness resilience with their own eyes. Even local reporters caught wind of the story, capturing photographs of the couple, smiling proudly beside their rebuilt home. The elderly man, once hunched from weariness, now stood taller. His wife, once wearied, now glowed with purpose. Together, they welcomed everyone with tea brewed over their small fire. Visitors left saying the same words. They've created paradise with nothing but love and hard work. What began as a tale of abandonment had transformed into one of hope. Their cabin was no longer just a home. It had become a symbol, reminding the world that even in hardship, beauty can be rebuilt. Seasons passed, and what was once a ruined shell of a cabin had transformed into a living paradise. The wooden walls stood strong. The roof no longer leaked, and the small garden flourished with vegetables and flowers of every color. Birds nested in the trees nearby, their songs filling The mornings with joy. The couple often sat together on the porch, sipping tea, their loyal dog resting at their feet. They didn't need riches. They're rebuilt. Home was proof that love could turn hardship into beauty. News of their story eventually reached far beyond the mountain village. Travelers came to see the paradise cabin, taking photos, writing about the couple's resilience, and leaving gifts at their doorstep. Even their children, who had abandoned them years earlier, heard of their parents' strength. Guilt weighed heavy on them, but the couple never spoke of anger. They had found peace in building, something greater than loss. They had built a legacy of hope. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, the husband looked at the cabin, glowing in golden light, and whispered, "We turn nothing into everything." His wife smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Their dog wagged its tail, gently as if agreeing. The mountain cabin, once a place of sorrow, now stood as a testament. With love, patience, and courage, even the most broken lives could be rebuilt into paradise.